And we welcome you to D2EastHoops.org's 2017-2018 preseason podcast alongside Steve Zerdelian and Chris Granozio. Don Familo manning the controls. I'm Tim McCaffrey. Let's preview the NE10 Northeast Division, and we start with Barbara Stevens' Bentley Club.
Falcons won 26 games a year ago, and they lost their all-time leading scorer in Jen Gemma, but this team is going to be just as good, if not better. Their depth is exceptional. A couple of Division I transfers and some very good freshmen bolstering the roster, which is also going to be propped up by the return of Megan Lewis, who missed last year with a knee injury. The veterans that are back, Lauren Green and Mackie Smith, were all league players in the NE10. Victoria Lux had a solid season in the middle. They're going 10-12 deep. When you're looking at the transfers, Maddie Springfield and Becca Musgrove coming in, this is a team that has size, depth across the board, and one of the best coaches in basketball. So Bentley is a clear favorite, not just in the division, but they're a clear favorite in the NE10 overall.
Yeah, Barbara Stevens, again, does a great job. And after what would be considered a disappointing season for them and a good season for most, making the NCAA tournament last year and losing in the first round to U Sciences, I think that they're even more dangerous when they have something to prove. Motivation is going to be key for this team, and I think they're up for the challenge.
Speaking of disappointing seasons, the year ago, Stonehill 12-14 overall, but they return everyone.
And they returned more than everybody, actually, because the reason they went 12-14 last year is they lost Kelly Martin to a foot injury all season, and she's one of the best players in the region. She's back this year and had a great game a couple of weeks ago when they beat Maine in an exhibition game on the road. So Martin's return puts everybody else in the roles that they flourish in particular, Courtney Walsh and Samantha Hyslop, who were all league players last season. That three is very good, and if they can stay healthy and build a little quality depth around that, Trish Brown's team has a chance to really shoot their win total up.
This could be another one of those old vintage NE10 years where Bentley and Stonehill are the premier matchup in women's basketball like they used to be, and I think this could be a really great Bentley-Stonehill battle for first this year.
It seems as though as long as Assumption stays out of the way of Lemoine, they had a pretty good season last year at 19-9 in an NCAA tournament bid. Kerry Fair's club, how will they fare this year?
Well, the problem here is that they lost 6 seniors, including their top scorers, Allison Stoddard, Kelly Carey, and Joe Impellizzeri. Only 3 players that average more than 5 points a game are back. So there's going to be a need for Assumption to retool a little bit. It's a young group in need of an identity. They've got some size this year, which is a little bit different for them. They've got 4 players who are 6 foot plus and a younger backcourt group. So it's a different challenge for Kerry Fair to undertake. But there's enough talent here for Assumption to be a solid playoff team in the NE10.
Speaking of teams looking for an identity, Southern New Hampshire 10-17 last season, and Karen Pinko's club needs to find an identity and fast.
Kylie Lorenzen is their identity, frankly. I mean, she's a terrific all-around player, but she needs consistent help. There are players on this roster that I like. Kat Stinson and Victoria Dean have good moments, but they're not consistent enough, and that's the problem. And Lorenzen sort of wore down as the season went on. The only key loss here is Sarah Ryan, but we're just going to have to see if they can develop that depth. I mean, that's been the question for the Penmen for years. They look like they're ready to take that next step, break the 500 mark, and be a consistent playoff team, but something seems to hold them back, and that's the challenge here for Karen Pinkos.
12-14 a year ago for the Purple Knights of St. Michael's. Will it be success in Burlington, Vermont?
I think they could be pretty much around the same general area. 500 is not an unreasonable goal for the Purple Knights. Shanna Kynock has some good returners. Leah Spencer, a very athletic player. Emily Ferrari had a good freshman year last year. Samantha Delaney, also a solid player. The core is reasonable. They did lose a couple of key veterans in Indira Evora and Tomiak and Petite. So if they can stay healthy and maybe develop a little bit of depth, I think they have a reasonable chance of being a 500-plus team.
Merrimack, 13-15 year season a year ago, and what do we expect out of the Warriors?
You know, the interesting part with Merrimack is I think their talent level doesn't reflect their record. I thought they were better last year than their record said. They do have some good players back. They have some athletic players. Lexi Martin on the wing. Lindsay Werner's a good shooter. Dania Davis-Stewart in the middle had a very good freshman season, is a deterrent in the paint. They need some scoring, though. Their only double-figure scorer, Myesha Alston, graduated, so they'll be competitive. They've got to find a way to get some more firepower and turn those close losses into some close wins. And then we're looking at a team that can win 16, 17, 18 games and maybe make a move in the division.
St. A's window may have closed. Is last season they were 18-11. They just missed out on the NCAA tournament. Not only a lot of new talent on the roster, but also a new head coach.
Yeah, Corey Boilard takes over for Julie Plant, and the Hawks are going to be a little bit hard to figure out early in the season. They lost Candace Andrews, one of the best players they've had in recent times, and a couple of very good front court players, and Caitlin Abella and Kayla Duarte. But Allie Glennon, Clary Putnam, anchor their attorneys coming back. They've got a handful of transfers, including a couple of 6'4" sophomores who will help change the dynamic of the team in the middle. 7 newcomers overall. So really the measure of how the new players integrate with the returners and a new coach is going to figure out, is going to point us where St. Anselm will go, and it could really go in any direction here.
For a team that finished 3-23 a year ago, Franklin Pierce lost an awful lot.
Yeah, it's hard to believe how much they lost. It's really a case where Jeanette Weedo had to hit the reset button in her first season last year. Gemma Thacker and Maya Mosley are among the better players coming back, but there's only 3 upper-class players on this roster, so it's a long road back for the Ravens. They have to start somewhere, and I think they're willing to take the time to put in the recruiting and try to build the base back up.
As we transition to the NE10 Southwest Division, last season, it was the Delphi Panthers hosting the regional. This season, AIC expected to finish first by many.
Kristen Hutchison has probably the most dominant interior player in the league, maybe the region, and Dana Watts. And she's a stalwart in the paint. She can shoot it. She's a great free throw shooter, which is great because she gets to the line an awful lot. Some good athletic players around her. Jada Gilmore had a good season in the perimeter. Melissa Guyon can score a little bit, and a couple of underclass players who showed something last year. Destiny Perry and Rashana Sedaris also brought some energy to the team. So I think those players are going to continue to grow for the Yellow Jackets. If their depth can continue to improve around Watts, I think this is a potential division-winning team.
I really like this team. I think Hutchinson does a great job with it. Watts is a really formidable foe inside, and again, a young team that has high upside. I'm a big AIC supporter.
Speaking of young teams with high upside, last year's regional number 1 seed at Delphi, Missy Traversy returns a 27-5 squad, but a lot of key losses, but also a lot of youth on that squad this year.
Delphi's a little like a high wire act. You never know what's going to happen with them. They're walking that tightrope, and they can hit heights or they can just crash and burn. More often than not, they hit those heights. The losses of Sierra Clark and Callie Balfour will be felt, certainly initially. But 2 good players coming back in Simone Hobdy and Niaja Morgan proved last year that they can shine when given more responsibility. And we're talking about, again, 10 new players, 9 freshmen, and a transfer coming in. Traversy is a coach who has so much energy and can bring together disparate parts very quickly. I would expect depth. I would expect energy. I would expect an Adelphi team that's just going to be in your face and difficult to play against. And I don't think they're going to fall very far.
Lemoine Dolphins 15-13 a year ago in the NE10 tournament semifinalists, but Gina Castelli has been even Steven in the NE10 in each of her 4 seasons at the helm of Lemoine, and a 10-10 overall league record is pretty hard to do year in and year out and year in and year out, but that's what she's been able to accomplish.
I guess the question is, can Lemoine break that trend? They've got one of the better perimeter players in the league to help do that, and Michaela Roberts, some useful veterans up front, Joanna Dabrowski and Nicole Riddick among the veterans that are back. Aaliyah Demand is among one of the losses. It's a tough division in this sense to try and take that step up. Adelphi and AIC have set a pretty high ceiling. I think Lemoine's probably going to be in the same general vicinity that they were last year, around 500, a little over. Whether they can break that 10-10 streak and really push the top 2, we'll have to see. But I think they can be pretty well neatly tucked in behind them.
It's really going to come down to the seniors. This is a veteran squad, 6 seniors on the roster, and Michaela Roberts, Rookie of the Year last year, is the spark plug that really makes the team go. If everybody can lift their game a little bit, they can get out of that 10-10 rut.
Carrie Seymour's Pace squad was 14-15 a year ago, and they're another team with a lot of question marks, some losses, some returners, but there's also some promise on the squad.
There's something about this Pace team that I'm really positive about. They did lose some good players, as you said, Kristen Dodge, their post player among them, but Alexander Monteleone I thought had a really good season last year. She could be one of the best players in the conference. Gabriella Rubin and Jackie Delasanti also good, solid players. Yeah, I mean, you look at Pace and you look at them on paper and think, yeah, they're probably going to be in the same vicinity, but I like what Carrie Seymour does with her group. I think if there's a dark horse in this division, you're looking at it. Could be Pace that could make that move and give the top 2 a lot to think about.
2 seasons ago, it looked as though St. Rose was a lock for the NCAA tournament, but a tough end-of-the-season stretch resulted in a no NCAA tournament appearance. 12-14 a year ago. And which way is St. Rose going this year?
I guess the arrows are pointing sideways. They really haven't went up or down at all. They'll lose a couple of players and they'll gain a couple of players, but the overall trend has been to kind of tread water at this point. Ashley Vanderwall, Carissa Birthright among the best returners here, but they've lost their way a little bit toward the end of the season the last couple of years, and they're going to have to find a way to reverse that if they're going to make a real push forward.
Now the Connecticut schools, Southern Connecticut, 12-17 last season, and Kate Lynch's club this season is another team that could be treading water.
They'll be lucky to tread water because they lost their 2 best scorers, Taylor McLaughlin and Maria Wesley, combined for over 30 points a game, half the offense. That's a big loss. Relatively speaking, those 2 are probably the biggest loss for any team in the Northeast 10. Kate Lynch can coach. There's no question about that. She's going to have a whole new group to work with. Sometimes when you wipe the slate clean in that sense, it's a positive. And there are some veterans that do have experience, Murphy Murad, Paige Decker, Kiana Steinauer among those. So the expectations are not going to be that great at Southern Connecticut. So I think that Lynch might be able to flourish and get this team moving in the right direction as a result.
Rounding out the Northeast 10, it's New Haven, a LaTanya Watson squad, 7-19 the season of go. It was a tough first season for her, and they have a long way to go.
There are some pieces there that can be really encouraging for New Haven fans. Alexandria Kurz is a good, solid player. Aaliyah Cubbage, Quanah Smith, among some of the other players that should feature for New Haven this season. Have some new faces in as well, so we'll see how the first recruiting class for Coach Watson goes. There's a lot of work to get back into playoff contention, but I think there's enough there for New Haven to be positive moving forward and try to create their new identity under Watson.
And that's the D2EastHoops.org's 2017-2018 season preview of the NE10 women's basketball. We'd like to thank our producer, Don Familo, and my co-hosts, Steve Zerdelian and Chris Granozio. For them, I'm Tim McCaffrey. We hope you listen to more podcasts right here on D2EastHoops.org.